To bring us home today, we have Elementos, ASX code ELT, and they have a market cap around 23 million. Elementos is an exploration and development company focused on advancing mineral projects, notably the Cleveland Tin-Copper-Tungsten Project in Tasmania, aiming to become a leading global tin producer. Presenting today for Elementos, we have Managing Director Joe David. Joe, welcome back, and over to you, my friend.
G'day, Paul. Thank you for having me. Apologies for this slide. I've just noticed we've got a bit of an overlay there, but thank you. I'm sure everyone listening will understand. Paul, I'm happy for you to skip forward 2 slides. Obviously, we've got our disclosure and cautionary statements there. We have posted this on the ASX, so if you choose to read through the fine print, please have a read. So very quickly, we couldn't be more different from the last presenter. We are an explorer, or probably more accurately, a developing tin company. We have 2 projects. Our flagship project is in Andalusia in the south of Spain. And we also have the Cleveland Tin Project in Tasmania. So we're very focused on developing our tin assets. But in saying that, tin often comes with a few other minerals. So we do have some other minerals that are coming through in these projects, which I'll cover later. We are certainly a development company. We're not there to go looking in greenfield assets and with the hope of finding it. Both assets have established mineral resources and highly mature mineral resources. We're certainly a company looking to take these assets through the permitting, through construction, and into operations. Next slide, thanks, Paul. So it's worth focusing on tin. So tin, when I present Elementos, I have to present tin. I don't expect many people are familiar with it, but it is a very critical mineral. Now, a lot of people claim that, but I thought it's worth putting this slide up, which shows the number of major economies around the world, of which tin ranks as a critical or strategic mineral. We're very pleased to see the Australian government add tin to their strategic mineral list as of December. Certainly helps us promote and move forward the Cleveland project in Tasmania, as well as the other major economies there. North America has absolutely no tin supply. That's Canada, USA, and Mexico. Obviously, a major consumer of electronics, of which tin is mostly used, as well as the European Union. No current tin mining in the EU, and certainly that's a focus of our Oropesa project. So next slide, thanks, Paul. So what is tin used for? Majority of tin used now is for electrical solder. So basically all the silver you see on an electrical circuit is basically tin. Tin connects all the other smart components that make the decision-making logic. Without tin, none of the smarts going into electrification or the decarbonation technologies of tomorrow are worked. So, people talk about copper a lot, and people in the game, I suspect a lot of people on the call have their copper investments. Certainly, we ride the same thematic moving forward. There certainly looks to be a significant undersupply of both copper and tin, but certainly tin is a much smaller market. We're about 2% of the copper market, actually, and tin is 30 times less abundant in the Earth's crust than copper. So very, very few chances to invest into tin in the global markets. There's only 2 listed producers of tin, one of which is Metals X, which owns half the Renison Bell mine in Tasmania. The other one is Alphamin, which has the Bissi deposit in the eastern DRC. And other than that, there's a couple of developers like ourselves. So very hard to get investment exposure, and certainly we think we're one of the flagship companies. Next slide, thanks, Paul. So continuing the story of tin, tin's gone on a bit of a run. We went through a bit of a peak in COVID when everyone was buying, setting up their home office with electronics. Obviously, with the inflationary pressures and all the lockdowns following that, tin's price dropped away a bit, but certainly we think fundamentals are coming back to the market. The Chinese price over $30,000 a tonne. The London Metals Exchange price is back just under 30, around about 27, 28, and certainly they're numbers that certainly stack up the economics of our project. So, but certainly supply and demand fundamentals make it look like there's going to be further deficits coming, and very few projects that are going to fill those deficits, and we're very happy to hold 2 of those projects. Next slide, please. So this is, getting back to that supply and demand. This is the data from the preeminent forecasters, which is the International Tin Association, of which I remember very few other banks or commodity forecast groups cover tin. It's such a small market. But basically, it looks like from next year, from this year, we're in a slight, when this was modeled in a slight surplus, that's probably going to be a deficit for reasons I'll take you through. But certainly, as you see, we're very quickly moving into material deficits up to about a 50,000 ton deficit by 2030. The current market size is 360,000 tons, so very significant deficits there moving forward. Next slide, please. So just this is worth focusing on. This is basically the global tin market. Very few responsible sources and very fewer secure sources. Remember, the major economies of the world have no tin supply. So obviously China does have a tin supply, but then North America is a complete importer and the EU the same. So basically the major miners and refiners of tin are China. The second biggest miner is Indonesia. Then you go Myanmar. Then you get into some of the Peru and Bolivia. Then you get into African countries with a very few supplies. A tiny supply coming out of Australia and virtually none coming out of Europe. That supply that supplied 400 tons is now not operating in Europe. So there's no tin supply in the EU. Indonesia and Myanmar, the number 2 and number 3 there, are both currently got major issues. Indonesia's exports went to virtually zero in January. They're having major investigations into their industry there. And Myanmar is in a current mining ban. So basically the second and third producers, and that's basically you go through the supply chain. There is issues pretty much at every point, and very few countries have been able to expand their supply over the last 20 or 30 years. Next slide, please. So that's basically my summary of the tin market. And then we get onto our projects. A major project is the Oropesa tin project in Andalusia in Spain. Andalusia is one of the preeminent mining regions within Europe. Sandfire Resources bought into the big copper, the Matsa project recently. First Quantum's there, and there's the Rio Tinto copper mine that's been operating for a couple of hundred years, operating the region. So yeah, of all the places in Europe, it's a very good place to be operating. Next slide, please. For us, as I said, we're mature. We don't like to take the exploration risk. So we have picked up the project when we already had a resource. However, we've done a lot of drilling, which has lifted the mineral resources up to, as you see, majority of our tons here, 19.6 million in total. 18.5 of those are sitting in measured and indicated. Now, for those that understand mining, that is the criteria you need for them to be converted when you finish your mining studies into JORC ore reserves, and the banks will only finance you on the back of JORC ore reserves. So certainly we've done all the exploration work. We've got high geological confidence, which has supported the rest of the studies we're doing. We're currently in a DFS for the project. DFS, a definitive feasibility study, is the most mature study we need to do to go take this into financing. And we're currently doing the DFS in parallel with our permitting in Spain. Next slide, please. So just on the scope of the project, and I'll go through this quite quickly, it's a 1.25 million tonne mining rate. We do use the ore sorting technology, which increases the grade and reduces the feed into the processing plant. About a 1 million tonne feed rate. That produces about 5,400 tonnes of concentrate, of which contain tin in that concentrate. It's about 3,350 tonnes per year, which is about 1% of the current tin market. Now, I think you find very few commodities out there, at least base metals. We have a mine producing 1%. So of that 1% of the global market, 100% of Europe's tin mines. So that's where we want to play, and we think it's a very strategic place for you to be right now. The EU is very, very determined to get their own domestic sources of these critical minerals, and we certainly want to become and are focused on becoming Europe's tin supply. In terms of the economics there, we're pretty low capital cost, 90 million in our last published scoping study, modelling about 100 million of revenue, 56 million of EBITDA, and using the 8% discount rate, we're modelling about 219 million US MPV, which is about 342 million Aussie. We're currently trading at a $20 million market cap, certainly significantly discount against what we think our net present value is. So certainly, I think there's some upside there for our investors. Moving through the next slide, please. In terms of the technical, as I said, we're in the DFS because we've done all the hard work. The resource is highly defined. We've done our work on our ore sorting. We've done all our metallurgical test work up to the confidence levels required, part scale, variability, geotech's known, groundwater studies done. We've done our mine planning, project layouts are done, tailings dam design is very mature, and our waste dumps are designed. So all the key pieces of work are completed to support that DFS, which we're currently working through. Next slide, please. So just moving on, I know we're running out of time, got about 30 seconds. So we do have our Cleveland Tin project. Was an operating mine until 1986 when the tin market collapsed. But it's got a very nice looking resource there, 7.5 million tonnes. There's also some tailings resources there, which we certainly are keen to look at reprocessing those. What's got us very excited though is this tungsten resource at depth. So it sits about 200 meters below the entry to the underground. And we're currently, we have a 4 million tonne resource there at 0.3% wolframite, which is quite competitive globally. But what just got really excited is this grey box at the bottom there. There looks like there's another 15 to 24 million tonnes. Oh, we've got an exploration target on that at about the same grade of wolframite. That would take us to a very substantial tungsten resource globally. So we're planning on putting a drill hole in that later in the year. The Tasmanian government's come in with a $70,000 grant to help us drill that. And certainly we think not only will we be a critical mineral in the tin side, but also the tungsten side is there's a lot of blue sky there. So most of the focus of the company right now is getting the Oropesa project across the line, getting it permitted, getting it into construction, and then our real focus will turn on bringing this Cleveland project into operations as well. Paul, just quickly, I'll slide through those next couple of slides, but effectively we've just got a board there, very experienced board. Andy has got a great history running Bechtel, their metals and mining division, for about 15 years. That's the US's largest engineering construction firm. He is also the major shareholder of the company. So if you just go to the next slide, currently trading at about a 22 million market cap. Andy's sitting there at 14%. So the management board have skin in the game. A number of other high net wealth and funds are holding the rest of those positions. But I understand I'm out of time, Paul, so happy to go to Q&A.
I'm keen to get some, I've got plenty of questions here, Joe. And let me just start off. We were obviously chatting before we came on live, and I believe you just got back from Spain. I'm sure that wasn't just a holiday. Can you give us an update? What were you doing in Spain, and any feedback from the meetings you had over there?
Oh yeah, we've got a team over in Spain, so I travel there quite regularly. But as the market knows, and the people, our current shareholders, this is a bit of a slimmed down presentation for to hit the 10 minutes. But certainly we are currently in some detailed negotiations with the government on our permit. So certainly over there meeting with the administration on those, moving those forward. But we're going through all the other critical items of a definitive feasibility study. I met some off takers over there. We met some other potential strategic partners, as well as always catching up with investors over in Spain. So now covering all the broad range of the role while I was over there, Paul.
Yeah, no, hear you loud and clear. And let's talk a bit. Obviously the DFS is incredibly important for this year. Question here: last year you announced the maiden zinc mineral resource at Oropesa. How important is that zinc resource for the DFS as a byproduct?
I think the easiest way to answer it is it's not important to the DFS. It is, and it actually hasn't been incorporated in the base case of the DFS, but it is a clear opportunity that would be crazy for us to ignore. So this is a pure byproduct credit opportunity for us. We are already mining the zinc with the tin. It comes in the same mining blocks in the same ore. We already do in our circuit. We do a crush grind and a sulfide flotation. For us, the sulfides go through the tailings dam, and we follow the oxides, which is the tin in the rest of the circuit. So for us, it is actually it is fully paid for up to that point, and basically it's just refloating a zinc con off the tailings that would otherwise be going through the waste storage area. So for us, purely opportunistic, but certainly from the data we've looked at, and from the internal modelling, not yet to be published, certainly looks like it's NPV accretive. So we will consider bringing it into the DFS. If not, it'll be something to add on after.
And you put up a slide earlier, and I want to just talk a little bit about this, about tin and where it's produced, where it's not produced. There's been a lot of volatility in critical minerals, certainly recently, nickel to one, lithium, and China certainly had their hands on the pricing that's going on with those minerals. You mentioned earlier, where tin comes from. China doesn't produce tin. USA doesn't produce tin. There's very little tin in Europe. You're based in Spain, and there's all this talk about people trying to find localized supplies. You're positioned very, very well, and by not having China producing tin, you're not going to see that volatility in the tin price as well. Is that a fair statement?
I may have, I'm not sure if I said it incorrectly or if it's being taken incorrectly. China does produce tin. China produces about 50% of the global tin.
Okay.
It doesn't mine all that 50% though. So it produces about 50% of the refined tin through its major smelters, but it imports a heap of ore across the border from Myanmar when Myanmar is operating, which it's not currently. And it also imports a lot of concentrate from around the world. So they do play a major role, although they consume all the tin they refine, and they are also a net importer of tin. So Indonesia is also 85% of the tin that Indonesia produces gets imported by China and gets consumed within China. So, and there's major issues with the Indonesian supply. As of last month, they went to 0.4 tons of tin exported from a rate that's usually around 6,000 to 7,000 tons. So there's major issues in the second largest miner and refiner being Indonesia. There's a major issues in the third largest miner, Myanmar, which is currently on a mining ban. So China's struggling to get its tin supplies right now. And I think what differentiates us from a few of those other markets is you see, say for nickel example, the mature mining markets like West Australia are having to turn off because the less developed mining countries are feeding cheap concentrate or metal into the market. We're seeing the opposite. We're not seeing the opposite. We're just seeing those the Indonesias, the Myanmars and stuff. They're actually producing less. They're struggling. All the cheap stuff seems to be gone, and there's a lot of there's a few political issues going on there as well. But that supply isn't just showing up like it is for some of those other critical minerals or base metals. So we're sitting in a very good place. We're happy to be in tin, and certainly looks like it's got a very weak supply dynamic at the moment, which hopefully should push through the commodity price.
Got it. And just to finish up with, and you touched on this earlier, tin has now finally been added to the critical minerals list by the Australian government. What are the implications of this for your company's Tasmanian tin project?
Again, a slight tweak to that. It's not on the critical, to be straight, it's not on the critical minerals list. It's on the strategic minerals list. The Australian government has come up with a sub list called the strategic, which sets us up to work with other international partners. So the US, as I said, the US, Canada, the UK, Korea, all these companies have it on their critical mineral list. So the Australian government has set up the strategic mineral list for us to now be able to work with those other allies and allow us to help facilitate us to supply into their critical minerals industries.
Joe, always a pleasure to have you on, and you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Paul. You too. And thank you to everyone listening.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're back next Friday with 4 more companies to present. You have a great weekend. Thank you.